The pandemic over?
The pandemic is over. We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over. If you notice, no one's wearing masks. Everybody seems to be in pretty good shape. And so I think it's changing, and I think this is a perfect example.
Brandon. Why'd you have to do it? If you'll notice, nobody's wearing masks. Well, if you'll notice, nobody's around you. You might also remember you had COVID like a week ago, buddy. You just got over it. Now, look, the Director General of the World Health Organization says we've never been in a better place in the pandemic, but only if all countries, manufacturers, communities, and blah, blah, blah step up and take it seriously. Like internationally, people are still trying to take this seriously, but here's Joe Biden saying, we're done. We're done, despite the fact that, as you'll see in this graphic, we're still averaging between 400 and 500 deaths a day. We just passed below 60,000 diagnosed cases per day. God knows what the actual number is. And so to jump out there, I know the political calculation that he seems to be making, Nina, but this is literally the last thing we need when we still have so many people getting sick, so many people dying, and so many people suffering from long COVID.
Don, I totally agree with that. And it is irresponsible to say that. It's not over as much as we would want it to be. We might be done with COVID, but COVID is not done with us. The pandemic is not done with us. And there are some deep-seated, even ripple effects that are happening to people all over this country, all over the world, that will never be done for a very, very long time because of the impact of this pandemic. So to say that things are getting better, that's different from saying that the pandemic is over. And for some people, things are not getting better, John. And what over 1 million people died from this thing. So just to have that kind of, we're out of it attitude does not make a whole lot of sense. It is irresponsible on the president's part.
Yeah, no, it's just it's not what's needed. I mean, we can acknowledge, as you're saying, the progress without pretending that it's done. And let's do that. Let's acknowledge the progress. So, while at the same time acknowledging how horrendous these numbers are, there were just over 440,000 new COVID cases and nearly 3,000 deaths from the virus in the US in the past week. That's according to Johns Hopkins. 3,000 deaths. I like, we're in the American context, so we have to say that's roughly a 9/11 this last week. Yeah. Now, yes, has it been worse? Sure, it's been worse. The record high was 5.6 million cases over 7 days last January and 23,300 deaths over 7 days in January 2021. So yes, we're not in the dark winter anymore, but it is still now one of the top ranking ways that people die just every day. And my fear, Nina, is that he's sort of right, that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not over. Not literally, not by the numbers. We're still at, like, if you had told us on day one of the lockdown that we would have these numbers, we'd be terrified. But now we're used to it. But I do think in terms of like culturally, socially, taking it seriously, doing whatever's necessary to save life, I feel like that's gone and probably has been gone for some time. I think most people they're going back to their lives. They're willing to accept or ignore the additional risk. I think very few people, if you were to ask them how many people died yesterday from COVID, I think very, very few people would get that number right. What do you think?
Yeah, and we do. I mean, the point that you're making, it's one thing to say, to be a visionary on this. We are in this moment within human history. This is one of the harshest times for anybody living, from 100 years ago, 100 years. We're gonna get through this. And we're going to do everything it takes. So taking what the general had to say about what the nations of the world have to do to get us through this as not only just a human species, but the whole ecosystem is dependent on us. That's one thing, John, but to say that it's over. And for some people, it is still winter because we know the poorest people in this country and also in this world are still suffering disproportionately because of this pandemic and the social, political, and economic variables that impact people in this way because of the pandemic is not going to be done for quite some time. And Bishop Jamal Bryant from Georgia talked about how we lost over 1 million people died and there was no national mourning. I think his point is well taken. To your point about if you ask people how many people are dying right now or just died, they wouldn't know because they are disengaged from it. We got to make sure that people are aware without inundating them. And we are losing ourselves by thinking that this thing is over. It is by no stretch of the imagination over.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And I think in terms of the knowledge, there's this weird mania around this where like Trump had his deranged rally this last weekend. And he said at one point, more people died, in 2021 than the first year of the pandemic. Because he said that because it's bad for Biden, right? Because Biden was president that year and more people died. And everyone in the crowd's like, yeah, boo. But at the same time, so is COVID serious? Should we do something about it? No, they don't think so. It's like they can have whatever reaction is needed in the moment. It's not a lingering thing. So, and politically, it works in the same way. So Biden comes out and says, the pandemic's over. Everybody, we're at car shows and stuff. And that's what the right has been asking for years. Can we all just go back to normal? I think it was Greg Gutfeld criticized Biden for saying that today. Even though he thinks the pandemic is over, he wants it to be officially over. Biden, I guess, is thinking, you know what, I'll say this, get a little bit of credit. No, there'll be no credit. They hate you because you were saying something was serious that they don't think is. And now that you're saying that it's not, they pretend that it is. It's all just so whatever it needs to be. It's a very frustrating part of American politics. Anyway.
There's some things that should be played with. This is one of them that should not. And I'm not just talking about the president's comments. I'm talking about the Republicans as well. Can we agree that this rises to the level of we got to do something about it, and it has to be done collectively?
I would hope. We've been pushing for that for a long time.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.